History's funniest pranks weren't harmless jokes. They nearly caused disasters. From fake volcano eruptions to UFOs over London, people totally panicked. Newspapers, radio hosts, even governments joined in on the chaos. Investors lost fortunes, cities froze in fear, and callers jammed hotlines. And the wildest part is, people believed every ridiculous detail. Today we'd laugh at these headlines, but back then, stakes felt real. So how did a few clever trolls fool entire countries repeatedly? And which prank started as a joke, but almost rewrote real history? Let's dive into the historical pranks that spiraled way out of control. The Great Moon Hoax newspaper prank that fooled New York. By the time the retraction appeared, people still pictured moonbat people. In the 1830s, the New York Sun wanted bigger circulation fast. Editors published a series claiming an astronomer saw bizarre creatures on the moon. There were bat-winged humanoids, crystal temples, and lush lunar forests described calmly. Readers trusted the scientific tone and the detailed imaginary telescopes mentioned. Preachers even worked the supposed lunar discoveries into their Sunday sermons that week. Competing papers were furious, but secretly jealous of the Sun's sales. Only later did the Sun quietly admit it was pure fiction. The hoax showed just how far people would trust confident printed nonsense. BBC's spaghetti tree hoax convincing Britain pasta grew on trees. For one glorious day, Britain believed spaghetti really dangled from trees. On April Fool's Day, a BBC News program visited spaghetti farmers in Switzerland. The segment showed families gently harvesting noodles from branches like orchard fruit. The reporter calmly explained how late frosts could damage that year's spaghetti crop. Because it aired on a serious current affairs show, viewers trusted everything. Afterwards, the BBC switchboard lit up with callers asking for growing tips. Some wanted to know which soil worked best for spaghetti shrubs. Others asked where to buy their own starter spaghetti saplings to plant. Producers later admitted the prank proved television's incredible power to shape belief. Orson Welles' War of the Worlds panic broadcast hoax. By the time phones jammed, some Americans thought Martians were really landing. On Halloween Eve, 1938, Orson Welles adapted War of the Worlds. Instead of a normal play, he framed it like breaking radio news. The bulletins interrupted dance music with reports of mysterious explosions on Mars. Soon, fake correspondents described tripod machines attacking New Jersey with deadly gas. Listeners who tuned in late missed the careful introductions explaining it was fiction. Some grabbed their families, filled cars, and sped away from imagined invaders. Newspapers the next day blasted radio for terrifying an already anxious country. The controversy accidentally launched Orson Welles' Hollywood career in spectacular, chaotic fashion. Taco Liberty Bell prank claiming Taco Bell bought a monument. For a few tense hours, Americans thought the Liberty Bell was branded. In the mid-1990s, Taco Bell ran full-page ads in major newspapers. They proudly announced they had purchased the Liberty Bell to reduce debt. According to the ad, it would be renamed the Taco Liberty Bell. People called the National Park Service furious, accusing them of selling national heritage. Talk radio shows lit up with callers threatening boycotts and angry letters. Only later did Taco Bell reveal it was a marketing stunt. They even joked the White House might sell the Lincoln Memorial next. The prank earned huge free publicity, proving outrage can fuel fast advertising. Burger King's left-handed Whopper hoax that customers demanded. By lunchtime, Burger King employees were begging customers to order normally again. On April Fool's Day, the company advertised a special left-handed Whopper. The ad claimed the ingredients were rotated precisely 180 degrees for southpaws. It sounded just technical enough that people didn't immediately question the idea. Left-handed customers proudly ordered the new burger designed just for them. Right-handed customers even requested the original Whopper, not the left-handed version. Workers had to explain there was only one burger, arranged identically. The prank showed how easily pseudoscience language can sell a silly concept. It also proved people love feeling like a product fits them personally. Sweden's 1962 color TV stocking trick that fooled a nation. For one evening, thousands of Swedes thought nylon stockings unlocked color television. In 1960 Sweden, state TV still broadcast exclusively in black and white. An engineering expert appeared on air with a serious instructional demonstration. He claimed stretching a fine stocking over the screen would bend light differently. According to him, the fabric would separate colors like a magic prism. Viewers rushed to drawers, yanked stockings, and taped them across heavy TV sets. Families sat expectantly, squinting at gray images through stretched mesh and wishful thinking. Of course, nothing changed, except a nation realizing it had been trolled. Years later, the stocking trick became a textbook example of authoritative nonsense. The 1957 BBC UFO flying saucer over London April Fools. By dawn, Londoners were already swapping stories about a mysterious glowing saucer. The stunt involved a hot air balloon disguised to look like a UFO. As it drifted over the English countryside, startled witnesses phoned police in panic. Some described eerie lights, others insisted they'd finally seen proof of extraterrestrials. When the craft eventually landed near London, curious crowds rushed toward the field. Instead of little green men, they found a very human media crew. The saucer turned out to be aluminum foil, framework, and clever lighting tricks. Officials laughed, but also saw how quickly UFO rumors spiraled without evidence. The hoax rode a wave of Cold War anxiety about things in the sky. Sans serif, a fake island nation travel feature that people believed. Newspapers soon discovered that thousands wanted holidays in a country that didn't exist. On April Fool's Day, a British paper printed a lavish special travel supplement. It profiled Sans serif, an Indian Ocean island shaped like a semicolon. The country's towns and regions were all named after printing typefaces and punctuation. Photos showed beaches, palm trees, and smiling locals with improbably nerdy place names. Many readers missed the typography jokes and simply saw cheap tropical paradise. Travel agencies reportedly received calls asking for flights to Sans serif's capital. Journalists gleefully watched their invented geography take on a life of its own. The prank became legendary, inspiring later spoof countries and fake tourist brochures. Google's Mentalplex search mind-reading April Fool's prank. For one tech-obsessed day, people tried to make Google literally read their minds. Around the early 2000s, Google teased a new feature called Mentalplex Search. The page instructed users to stare at an animated circle and visualize queries. Instead of typing, you were supposedly sending thoughts directly into the search engine. Users who clicked got tongue-in-cheek error messages about muddled or distracted thinking. One warning even blamed chronic daydreaming or inability to focus on single subject. Some folks briefly wondered if Google might actually detect brainwaves through monitors. Others instantly recognized it as the company's now traditional April Fool's joke. The prank nudged people's growing fear that technology might soon read everything. The eruption of Mount Edgecumbe fake volcano stunt in Alaska. By morning, Alaskans genuinely thought a long-dormant volcano had suddenly awakened. In 1970's Sitka, local prankster Oliver "Porky" Bickar planned something spectacular. He waited until April Fool's Day, then flew a helicopter over Mount Edgecumbe. From the air, he dumped dozens of burning tires into the snow-filled crater. People in town looked up and saw a perfect column of black smoke. With the volcano long quiet, many feared they were watching its reawakening. The Coast Guard scrambled aircraft to investigate the unexpected eruption above Sitka Sound. Pilots arrived to find the message "April Fool" spray-painted on crater snow. Legend says even officials eventually admitted it was impressively executed mischief. The 1998 Alabama pie redefinition hoax that outraged mathematicians. Within hours, math teachers were forwarding furious emails about Alabama banning real PI. In the late 1990s, a satirical article claimed Alabama's legislature changed pi's value. According to the piece, lawmakers rounded pi to a neat, biblical-friendly number. The parody suggested they preferred simple fractions over messy, infinite decimal expansions. Scientists, professors, and skeptics groups sent indignant letters denouncing the supposed law. Only after fact-checking did people realize no such bill ever existed. The author admitted it was commentary on politics meddling with objective truth. Ironically, the hoax spread faster online than many real math education stories. The Sid Finch fake baseball prodigy story Sports Illustrated invented. Baseball fans spent weeks believing a barefoot pitching superhuman had joined the Mets. In the mid-1980s, Sports Illustrated published a feature on pitcher Sid Finch. The article claimed he could throw over 160 miles per hour effortlessly. Finch supposedly trained in a Tibetan monastery, meditating between astonishing practice sessions. Photos showed him in partial Mets gear, lending the piece convincing authenticity. Some players reportedly asked quietly whether the team really had discovered a miracle. The writer and model had conspired with photographers for maximum realism throughout. To this day, Sid Finch remains one of sport journalism's greatest fabricated pranks. The Derbyshire concrete sheep farmer's revenge on nosy tourists. By summer's end, day trippers were posing happily with sheep that never moved. In rural England, locals were tired of drivers blocking lanes photographing their flocks. According to the oft-told story, farmers quietly installed life-size concrete sheep near roads. From a distance, the statues looked perfectly fluffy, frozen mid-graze on green hillsides. Tourists stopped, took pictures, and only later realized nothing in the field shifted. Some even returned home boasting about authentic countryside life captured on their cameras. Meanwhile, real sheep grazed safely farther away, unbothered by parked cars and selfies. Whether every detail is true or not, the tale spread across farming forums. It became a folk hero prank about locals reclaiming peace from intrusive curiosity. The Great Stock Exchange hoax of 1814 fake Napoleon defeat. For a few profitable hours, London investors believed Napoleon had completely surrendered. In 1814, with war still raging, financial markets reacted instantly to battlefield rumors. Two swindlers hired messengers and staged celebratory scenes near the city's main roads. They spread word that Napoleon was dead and peace had finally been secured. As the news rippled through London, government bond prices surged dramatically upward. The conspirators sold at the peak, pocketing massive gains from panicked optimism. When official dispatches arrived contradicting the claims, prices crashed back to reality. Authorities eventually uncovered the scheme and dragged the hoaxers into court. The episode showed how easily markets can be gamed with fabricated good news. The 1874 zoo escaped wild animals hoax terrifying New Yorkers. By breakfast, some New Yorkers truly believed tigers were prowling Fifth Avenue. In the 1870s, a New York newspaper printed a horrifying special bulletin. It claimed that dangerous animals had escaped from the Central Park Zoo overnight. According to the story, lions, tigers, and rhinos were roaming city streets. Frighteningly specific details described injuries, overturned carriages, and desperate police gunfights. Only at the very end, in tiny print, did it reveal fiction. Many readers never reached that line before rushing to warn their neighbors. Critics slammed the paper for causing needless fear in an already anxious city. The hoax helped spark debates about journalistic responsibility versus sensational storytelling. The Paddington Bear smuggled into Buckingham Palace schoolboy prank. When the headmistress finally learned the truth, the royal tour photos were priceless. A British school group visiting Buckingham Palace had been warned about strict security. One boy supposedly decided the Queen's home needed a secret extra guest. He tucked a small Paddington Bear toy under his jacket before the visit. During the tour, he quietly posed the bear in front of grand rooms. Classmates stifled laughter while snapping photos featuring the smuggled stowaway in frame. Only after returning did teachers notice the same little bear in every shot. Rumors spread through the school that Paddington had infiltrated one of Britain's tightest palaces. The harmless prank became a cherished legend among students who'd visited that year. The Yale student who faked an entire football playbook. By kickoff, one Ivy League team believed they'd stolen their rival's secret strategies. The story goes that a Yale student accidentally dropped a binder near opponents. Inside was a perfectly formatted playbook stuffed with diagrams and coded signals. Rivals eagerly scooped it up, convinced they'd gained a decisive tactical advantage. Coaches frantically rewrote their own plans around what they expected Yale would run. What they didn't know was that every play inside the binder was bogus. On game day, Yale ran completely different formations, catching defenders flat-footed repeatedly. The fake notebook reportedly sat proudly in a fraternity house afterward as a trophy. Whether embellished over time or not, it remains campus legend about weaponized homework. MIT students parking a police car on the Great Dome. When Cambridge woke up, a police cruiser somehow sat atop MIT's iconic dome. MIT students are famous for elaborate hacks, their word for nerdy pranks. One night, a team quietly disassembled a real-looking police car into manageable pieces. They smuggled everything onto the Great Dome roof under cover of darkness. By morning, the vehicle appeared completely intact, lights and paint job perfectly arranged. Passers-by gawked at the impossible sight, wondering how heavy metal got up there. Campus officials grumbled about safety, but secretly admired the engineering and logistics. Photos of the car went viral long before viral was everyday vocabulary. The stunt cemented MIT's reputation for pranks requiring serious planning and physics knowledge. Caltech's legendary Rose Bowl card stunt hijacking opponents' show. By halftime, television viewers saw fans spell out the wrong team's name entirely. Caltech students targeted the Rose Bowl, where another university's band performed a card stunt. Volunteers in the stands had colored cards to raise for giant coordinated messages. Before game day, Caltech pranksters snuck into the stadium and rearranged instruction sheets. Instead of cheering their own school, the sequence now secretly spelled out Caltech. When the moment came, unsuspecting fans dutifully raised cards in perfect synchronization. The camera zoomed out, revealing a stadium-sized plug for a completely different college. Band organizers were mortified, while Caltech students celebrated with nerdy, quiet satisfaction. The hijack remains one of the most elegantly executed stadium pranks ever. The 1903 Oxford undergraduates' fake motorcar speed limit protest. By afternoon, local newspapers were scolding Oxford students for protesting a law that never existed. Early in the automobile era, public anxiety about speeding was already running high. A group of undergraduates drafted a fake government notice about absurdly strict speed limits. They posted it around town announcing crawl-pace driving rules enforced by harsh penalties. Citizens, assuming it genuine, gathered to complain about bureaucrats strangling modern transport. Students then staged a mock protest, pretending to oppose the fake regulation. Officials eventually had to clarify that no such law had ever passed. Some townspeople felt ridiculous for marching against a non-existent piece of legislation. The episode captured how easily official-looking paperwork could steer public anger. The Sydney iceberg tugboat hoax towing Antarctic ice into harbor. When fog lifted, Sydney residents realized their brand-new iceberg had seams and rivets. In the late 1970s, an entrepreneur announced he'd tow icebergs from Antarctica to Australia. He promised the floating ice would solve water shortages by slowly melting in reservoirs. One morning, a tugboat appeared pulling what looked like a pristine white iceberg. Crowds gathered along the harbor, amazed at the scale of the frozen chunk. As the sun warmed it, however, the ice began drooping suspiciously around the edges. Soon, colored dye leaked and plastic sheets sagged, exposing foam under the surface. Spectators burst into laughter while the hoaxer admitted it was all stagecraft. The fake iceberg still sparked conversations about wild solutions to real environmental problems. The eruption of Surtsey fake island reports that fooled many. For a brief moment, some readers believed an Icelandic island had performed impossible tricks. When the volcanic island Surtsey emerged in the 1960s, scientists carefully restricted access. They wanted to study how life colonized brand new land without human interference. Soon, satirical pieces joked that researchers had discovered bizarre plants and impossible creatures there. One widely shared spoof claimed Surtsey sported square eggs and self-boiling hot springs. Because real reports already sounded strange, some people didn't notice where science ended. Officials had to remind the public that outlandish discoveries weren't from actual expeditions. Surtsey remained fascinating enough without imaginary monsters or cartoonish geology added. The incident blurred lines between serious field reports and playful scientific humor. The BBC's Big Ben going digital April Fool's announcement. For a while, listeners genuinely believed London's most famous clock was losing its hands. On April Fool's Day, the BBC announced Big Ben was going digital. The broadcast calmly said the iconic clock face would be replaced by numbers. They even joked that callers could win the original hands as souvenirs. Some overseas listeners, missing local British humor, took the change completely seriously. Complaints poured in about tradition being sacrificed for modern convenience and tourism. Eventually, the station confessed it had no intention of turning Big Ben pixelated. The prank became one of the BBC's most retold April Fool's classics. It proved how attached people feel to landmarks, even over imagined threats. The London smog-free day hoax promising instant clean air. By lunchtime, Londoners were making sarcastic jokes about miracle devices that never arrived. Tabloids once splashed headlines about a revolutionary machine that would instantly clear smog. According to the pieces, city officials planned a single smog-free day. Special trucks supposedly carried technology that could vacuum pollution straight out of the sky. The articles included vague diagrams and quotes from unnamed leading atmospheric experts. Residents stuck in traffic fantasized about blue skies returning with the flip of switches. When no such operation appeared, it became obvious the story was playful exaggeration. Environmental groups later used the hoax to highlight real long-term solutions instead. The episode showed people crave quick fixes, especially for problems literally hanging overhead. The 1969 Silent Film Festival that secretly played only blank reels. Organizers knew they'd made history when the crowd applauded a completely empty screen. A student film society announced a weekend festival devoted to rediscovering silent cinema. Posters promised rare reels from archives and experimental early 20th century masterpieces. Cinephiles packed the hall, ready for flickering frames and live piano accompaniment. Instead, projectionists loaded completely clear leader film onto the projector for the first screening. On screen, nothing appeared except dust specks and occasional scratches drifting by. Audience members sat confused, unsure whether this was deep commentary or technical disaster. Some critics praised it as daring art before realizing it was an elaborate prank. The festival eventually showed real movies, but the opening blank night became legend. The Times Antarctic Jack of Penguins hoax claiming square eggs. By the end of the day, readers were debating the physics of square omelets. A British paper once ran a feature on rare Antarctic Jack of Penguins. The birds allegedly laid square eggs, perfectly suited for stacking in rocky nests. Illustrations showed neatly cubed eggs balanced like building blocks beside waddling adults. The piece sprinkled just enough Latin names and fake expert quotes to sound plausible. Curious children wrote essays about the species, while some adults smelled something fishy. Eventually, editors admitted the square-egg penguins belonged with flying pigs and spaghetti trees. The hoax happily joined a long line of animal-themed April Fool's stories. It also nudged readers to question anything that feels designed for perfect convenience. The 1977 gravity decrease radio hoax making listeners float objects. For a few minutes, callers insisted their bodies really felt strangely lighter. A British radio astronomer announced an upcoming rare alignment of planets on air. He claimed that when it happened, Earth's gravity would temporarily weaken noticeably. Listeners were told to jump at a specific time to feel themselves float. At the appointed moment, thousands dutifully bounced in living rooms across the country. Soon afterward, the station received calls reporting tingling, dizziness, and miraculous levitation feelings. Some said they'd lifted heavier objects more easily, convinced physics had briefly changed. The host later explained it was a playful demonstration of suggestion's power over perception. The prank remains a favorite example of how authority can bend people's senses. Texas University students painting rival mascot statue in school colors. By sunrise, the rival campus woke up to find its proud mascot completely repainted. College rivalry in Texas can turn even bronze statues into battlegrounds. One night, students from a visiting university slipped past security into enemy territory. Armed with buckets of paint, they targeted the central mascot statue in the quad. Working quickly, they covered it in their own team's colors and slogans. When morning classes started, students stared in disbelief at the hijacked symbol. Photographs spread across local papers, turning the repaint into statewide sports gossip. Campus workers needed hours of scraping and solvents to restore the original finish. The stunt joined a long line of escalating pranks fueling Texas game day tension. The 1896 Man Flies Over Paris balloon flight newspaper hoax. Parisian readers briefly believed a lone inventor had quietly beaten the Wright brothers. In the 1890s, newspapers loved breathless stories about miraculous new flying machines. One article described a Frenchman soaring over Paris in a secret aircraft. The account listed impossible speeds, sharp turns, and altitudes no balloon could reach. Sketches showed a fantastical contraption gliding gracefully above familiar Parisian landmarks. Excited readers imagined a future filled with private airships parked on rooftops. Engineers, however, quickly pointed out the glaring technical impossibilities in the design. Eventually, the paper admitted its flight report belonged firmly in the imagination column. Still, the hoax captured real public hunger for powered flight decades before reality. The college dorm room filled completely with newspaper prank. By the time he opened his door, his dorm room had disappeared entirely. College pranksters love projects that require ridiculous amounts of cheap, recyclable material. One group spent days collecting old newspapers and phone books from campus bins. While their friend was away for the weekend and they slipped into his room, they carefully rolled, crumpled, and stacked paper until it reached the ceiling. Drawers, bed, and desk all vanished under a uniform sea of gray print. When the victim finally pushed the door, an avalanche of newspaper spilled out. Neighbors gathered to watch him tunnel slowly toward his belongings, laughing the whole time. Photos of the paper-filled cave circulated, inspiring copycats at other universities. The 1933 Loch Ness Monster photo printing office cardboard hoax. For decades, a cardboard cutout helped convince the world Nessie really existed. In the 1930s, a now famous photograph appeared to show a serpent in Loch Ness. The monster raised its head elegantly from rippling Scottish water in grainy black and white. Later investigations suggested the image came from a model built in a workshop. One participant admitted they'd mounted a small head and neck on a toy submarine. They then photographed it from a distance to hide the scale and mechanics. Printers reproduced the dramatic image across newspapers, giving it unearned scientific gravitas. Tourism around the lake boomed as visitors searched for glimpses of the creature. Even after debunking, the picture still shapes how people imagine Nessie today. The fake royal engagement announcement slipped into a newspaper. Society circles buzzed madly for days about a royal engagement nobody had planned. At a busy newspaper, layout staff occasionally amused themselves with tiny planted jokes. According to newsroom lore, someone once slipped in a bogus engagement notice. It paired a genuine European royal with an entirely unsuspecting private citizen. The announcement used formal language, complete with dates, venues, and proud family names. Sharp-eyed readers in high society noticed immediately and started whisper networks of speculation. Embassies reportedly contacted editors asking for clarification about the surprise betrothal. The paper had to issue an embarrassed correction and internal disciplinary memos. The prank highlighted just how seriously people treat anything printed in announcements columns. The university library car stacked inside study room prank. When the librarian unlocked the group study room, she found a compact car waiting. On many campuses, prank legends revolve around putting vehicles where they shouldn't fit. A group of engineering students allegedly chose a small car as their target. They located a ground-floor study room with doors just barely wide enough. Working overnight, they removed certain interior pieces and recruited strong friends to help. Piece by piece, they maneuvered the vehicle through corridors and into the library. By morning, the car sat neatly parked between whiteboards and study tables. Administrators were furious, but also reluctantly impressed by the logistics and teamwork. Stories of the library car spread, inspiring sketches and whispered planning sessions elsewhere. The fake elevator floor collapse prank that looked terrifyingly real. Elevator riders genuinely thought the floor had vanished beneath their feet. A tech company installed ultra-realistic screens on an office building's elevator floor. Hidden cameras recorded as unsuspecting people stepped onto what seemed like normal panels. Mid-ride, the screens glitched, showing tiles cracking and dropping into a deep shaft. Some passengers froze, grabbing handrails, while others leapt to imaginary safer corners. All the while, the elevator itself was operating perfectly, never actually moving dangerously. The resulting video went viral, sparking debates about ethics in extreme hidden camera pranks. Critics worried about scaring people with heart conditions or anxiety disorders unnecessarily. Still, the illusion proved how easily our brains trust what our eyes insist. The 1910 Halley's Comet poison gas panic sales hoax. Entrepreneurs sold comet pills while promising to save people from imaginary cosmic poison. In 1910, Halley's Comet swung close enough for its tail to worry newspapers. Some articles warned that Earth might pass through gas clouds in the comet's wake. Opportunists quickly marketed special masks, tonics, and tablets against supposed lethal vapors. Advertisements claimed their products would neutralize dangerous gases or fortify lungs overnight. Panicked citizens bought supplies, stored them at home, and watched the sky nervously. When nothing catastrophic happened, sellers quietly disappeared along with their comet-themed merchandise. Scientists later emphasized that comet tails are far too diffuse to harm Earth. The episode became a classic example of fear-based marketing piggybacking on real astronomy. The Red Hugh Bridge fake toll charge protest coin bucket prank. Commuters nearly revolted when volunteers appeared to start charging tolls overnight. On a busy British bridge, drivers suddenly encountered people holding official-looking buckets. Signs announced a trial toll to fund urgent maintenance and safety improvements. Many motorists, assuming it authorized, paid small change while grumbling about rising costs. Others refused, rolling down windows only to argue with the supposed collectors. After an hour, pranksters revealed the toll booth was entirely unofficial street theater. Coins were later donated to charity, partly to soothe drivers' bruised tempers. Local papers ran photos of bewildered commuters trying to understand the pop-up scheme. The stunt sparked real discussion about who should pay for aging infrastructure repairs. The fake archaeological find that sent scholars on wild goose chase. Academics spent weeks chasing clues from an artifact that never survived its own unveiling. An artful prankster crafted an ancient object and buried it near a dig site. When discovered, the piece seemed to blend styles from several distant cultures suspiciously. The creator eventually confessed, claiming they wanted to expose confirmation bias in research. The frozen student campus statue prank that went international. By mid-semester, tourists were asking directions to see the frozen guy between classes. On a cold campus, art students decided to turn a classmate into living sculpture. They dressed him in outdated clothes, gave him a weathered backpack, and painted details. Every morning he stood motionless on the same spot near a main walkway. Students passed, joked, and eventually stopped noticing, assuming he was an ordinary statue. One day, a visiting group posed for photos beside him like usual. Right as cameras clicked, he suddenly changed pose, sending people screaming and laughing. Someone posted the video online, and the clip spread far beyond the university. The prank blurred lines between performance art, statue, and everyday student life. The library moving bookshelves prank that fooled visiting dignitaries. Guests were convinced the university library had invested in some kind of magical architecture. Before an important tour, students secretly modified a row of lightweight rolling shelves. They attached hidden casters and fishing lines routed through gaps in the ceiling. During the visit, a guide mentioned automated shelving developed by the engineering department. At a cue, students gently pulled the lines, making the shelves glide sideways silently. Books seemed to rearrange themselves as the astonished visitors watched from a distance. Some dignitaries applauded, assuming they'd witnessed cutting-edge robotics in action. Afterward, the librarians carefully returned everything to its original, non-moving configuration. For years, alumni told stories about the day the shelves learned how to walk.